7:23 p.m. And in accordance with Governor Raimondo Executive Order 21-01 dated January 6, 2021, the Cumberland School Committee intends to conduct this meeting remotely. The public can participate in this meeting remotely, but not in person, by calling 1-312-626-6799, webinar ID 939-4796-2430, or they can join via Zoom, and the link is on the Cumberland District website. The next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. You can remain seated. So, I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty, justice for all.
And the next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. And just to state that in compliance with Governor's Executive Order 21-01 dated January 6, 2021, there is public access to the meeting through adequate alternative means. And Mr. Chandler, we have the public. Yes, great. Okay, so I need a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve, Madam Chair?
Motion by Mr. DeMonica,
Second.
by Mrs. Feather. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it, 7-0. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. And I'm going to take items A through F together and then do the personnel actions separately. So the consent agenda, item A, approval of minutes from the regular meeting 12/10/2020, approval of minutes of the executive session 12/10/2020, enrollment report 1/1/2021, school police report 12/1/2020, school bus inspection reports 1/1/2021, residency truancy report 1/1/2021. I'd like a motion to approve items A through F.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Collins,
Second.
second by Mrs. Rogalski. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it, 7-0. And then with the personnel actions, it's been our tradition to break them out. We have 3 different sections tonight. We have 2 retirements that I know Mr. Mitchell will be speaking to, 2 appointments, and then a number of coaching appointments. So I will just take them kind of one group at a time. So the first group is the retirement, 5 years of service of James Marsland Jr., the custodian at the CHS Transitional Building, and the retirement after 30 years of service of Marguerite Savickas, the data manager. So I guess I was just going to ask, should I approve these one group at a time or just read through all of them and approve it as one group?
Would you like me to respond? I don't think they actually need to be approved. They're just more of it's based on the accountability. It's just a FYI at this point that
Okay.
These items are
Okay, so I do want to just acknowledge them out loud for the record, and then will we need to approve this personnel actions? We don't need to approve them. We just need to approve the consent agenda of the personnel actions.
correct.
Okay, all right, thank you. And we have 2 appointments. Teresa Kluznik, paraprofessional at Community School for 1 year. Lisa Chase, paraprofessional at Cumberland Hills School for 1 year. And then we have a number of spring coaching appointments. So I'm going to read through these. Mark Andriozzi as the varsity hockey coach, Jacob Borgia as the indoor track and field boys and girls assistant coach, Tyler Calabro, the boys basketball junior varsity coach, Kerry Carpenter, assistant boys indoor track and field, Brett Coder, girls basketball JV, George Coder, girls basketball varsity, Richard Goudreau, boys indoor track and field, Roderick McGarry, boys and girls swimming, Vanessa Malloy, girls indoor track and field, Jonathan Paquin, assistant hockey coach, Michael Pariseau, freshman basketball, Gary Reedy, boys varsity basketball, Michael Bedrosian, boys basketball, Janine Boisel, girls basketball, David DeJesus, girls basketball, Danielle Johns, boys basketball, Sean Barlow, boys basketball. So just wanted to acknowledge that for the record. And so now I need a motion to approve the consent agenda for the personnel actions.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion by Mr. Rogalski, second by Mr. DeMonica, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it 7-0. Thank you for that. The next item on the agenda is report out of executive session meeting. Report out of executive session meeting on 1/14/2021. With the report out of executive session votes, we did not have any votes in the executive session. And then a vote to seal the minutes of the executive session. So I need a motion to a vote to seal the minutes of the executive session.
Motion to seal.
Mrs. Smith
second.
makes the motion, and Mrs. Feather seconds it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it 7-0. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, everyone. And the first thing I think we need to do is just to apologize for the fact that we were a little bit late in starting this meeting this evening. And one of the meetings went a little longer than expected. It's really difficult sometimes to judge the amount of time that's going to be needed for some of the important things that we need to discuss. So we apologize for keeping everyone waiting a little longer than expected. It is my pleasure to share some really important information with all of you. I think the first thing that we'd like to do is to recognize some folks that are retiring. And I know that we have some of the administrators here this evening who work with these individuals. But it is my pleasure to share with all of you 3 individuals that are retiring. Antonio Alves, a custodian at B.F. Norton Elementary School, is retiring after 24 years. Suzanne Manseri, a paraprofessional for 17 years, working currently at Ashton School. And Donna Marshall, a paraprofessional, has been working in the Cumberland School Department for 22 years, currently working at Cumberland Hill School. So we congratulate all 3 of these individuals on their retirement, who have together dedicated 63 years of service to the Cumberland School Department. We wish them well in their retirement. And as I mentioned, and again, I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but we do have some of the administrators here, and I don't know if they wanted to say anything about the retirees. I see Sandy. Sandy, not to put you on the spot, Sandy LaRiviere, did you want to say anything about Antonio?
Hi, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, yep.
Okay. I have a new headset, so I didn't know if people could hear me. But yes, we've been blessed with Tony. He's done a fabulous job. He's been at BF for the past 4 years, and he's always, present and so good with the kids and keeping everything clean. And we'll miss him terribly. Good luck, Tony.
Tony's always has a smile. He is a gentleman. He will be sadly missed.
Yes.
Nydia, would you like to say anything about Suzanne Manseri?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Mrs. Manseri has been a teacher assistant at Ashton School. She worked in the classroom, and for the past couple of years, she worked as a teacher assistant one-on-one. And during her time with us, Mrs. Manseri has gone above and beyond caring for our students and for the staff. She's been a friend to us, and she's been excellent in her job, taking care of her duties. So she's going to be greatly missed. We've missed her already since she's already started her retirement. And we want to say congratulations on behalf of the Ashton families and staff to Mrs. Mansieri.
Thank you, Nydia, and congratulations again, Suzanne. And last but not least, Mrs. Malcolm, are you here?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you.
I have had the pleasure of working with Donna Marshall in two different atmospheres. First, when we were colleagues at community school when she was a paraprofessional and I was working as a speech language pathologist. And I was always impressed with her dedication, her professionalism, and just her overall joy for wanting to be working directly with our students. And as I transitioned to my leadership role at Cumberland Hill, I was more than excited to have the opportunity to work with her again in her role as a paraprofessional there. She has demonstrated ongoing dedication, professionalism, empathy, support for our students. And as my colleague said earlier, regarding their individuals who are retiring, she is already missed. She's always positive, happy, and all I can say is those are some big shoes to fill. And I can only wish her well in her future now as she moves forward in her retirement. So thank you, Donna, along with the Cumberland School family and our families. We wish you well and only wish for the best. Thank you.
Now, I don't want to put any of the retirees on the spot, but I also don't want to move on without giving you an opportunity if you had something that you wanted to share. Donna, Suzanne, or Antonio. Not necessary, but I just wanted to extend the invitation. Most people aren't real comfortable, just so that you know. Seeing none.
Suzanne?
I'm sorry, go ahead. Can you repeat that, Mike?
I have, Suzanne would like to say something.
Oh, okay, great. Yes, good for you, Suzanne.
Hand up, just give me one sec.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Okay, first of all, I just want to say thank you to everyone, especially to Nydia. She wasn't only a boss, but she was truly a great friend. And I really am going to miss her. I'm going to miss the kids. I'm going to miss everyone at Ashton. We were an Ashton family and we will still be an Ashton family. And thank you, Mr. Mitchell, for your kind words to all of us. I really appreciate it. And I guess that's it.
Well, thank you, Suzanne.
Good night.
Thank you. Okay, I think we're good to move on. Thank you, Mike. Mike, can you put up the spreadsheet, please, for everyone to see?
Sure.
This document, everyone, we have been sharing it at the school committee meetings over the last several weeks. And I just want to keep everyone updated as to where we are with the number of positive cases, both for students and staff, the number of students and staff that have been quarantined, and how schools are impacted. As you can see, it's not surprising that the numbers are increasing, and the reason that we like to do it almost on a weekly basis now is so that you can see the trends, and we're hoping that with vaccinations, the numbers will stabilize, and we won't see the increases that we have been seeing. So I think it's important for people to have some sense of how we're being impacted by this pandemic, and we will continue to share this information with you. And I will also continue to include it in my weekly communication so that you can spend more time reviewing it. So I just wanted to give folks a sense of the trends in the school department. Okay, thanks, Mike. I think we're good there. Just a few more items, everyone. I wanted to let you all know that we have a graduation date so that you can put it on your calendars. And by the way, the graduation date has not been chosen by us. I guess we could have done it later if we wanted to, because we have a state calendar now. That is, every district in the state is using the same calendar. Graduation will be on June 11th. And that is, by the way, the earliest that graduation can take place. And within the next week or so or less, Mr. Costa, the principal of the high school, will be letting everyone know where the graduation will be. So it's a little bit of a surprise right now. And Mr. Costa will be sharing that information this week. But I just wanted everyone to know that graduation will be on June 11th. The next thing that I wanted to share with everyone is in-person, increasing the number of, or getting more students into school as opposed to the hybrid model that we have been using. As I've stated many times, our biggest responsibility as educators is to get our students in school and get them in school as much as possible. And currently we're using the hybrid model, which means those families that have decided on the hybrid model, their students are in school 2 days a week. Well, we feel that we're in a position, we're at a point where we can start to consider bringing students back. And our thinking right now is that we would continue to maintain Mondays as virtual days, and we would start to bring students back, starting with the elementary grades, back full time. So, and we know, when I make a statement like that, those families that have decided on distance learning, they get nervous. We're still going to provide an opportunity for those families who would like to continue with distance learning. Those families will have an opportunity to do that. But we also know that there are families who are anxious to get their students in school more than they already are, more than the 2 days. Now, the science and will guide the decisions that we make, but there is some work to be done. And we're hoping that we can start to bring students back at the elementary level beginning sometime in March. Now, we don't have a concrete date yet. We discussed this as an administrative team on Wednesday, and already there have been several meetings to start planning the return of more students to our schools. So I just wanted to give families a heads up to let them know that we are working on this, and more information will be forthcoming. And there are definitely some challenges. I'm not going to get into the challenges right now, but we will share with you some of the challenges that we are faced and that we're going to have to figure out in order to get students back. So I just wanted to give everyone a heads up, and we're working on it. And as soon as we are we have more information, and we are more clear on when we're able to start, we'll get that information out to everyone as soon as possible. So that's one thing that I wanted to mention to everyone. The other thing that I wanted to mention is, and some of you have heard about this, if not many of you have heard about this, school departments have been given an opportunity to do asymptomatic testing. So there were essentially three choices that districts were given. One is, we don't want anybody to do testing. We don't feel it's necessary for our students and staff to be tested. The option one that was shared with us was this. Option one is each individual school would have staff trained to administer what is called the Binax test. So we would have to train our staff, our nurses, our administrators, a lot of work organizationally to get these tests done. So this would be an added responsibility onto the very busy schedules that our nurses and our administrators already have. So that is option one. Option two is having the Department of Health come to a location, and the Department of Health actually does the testing. So they bring in a team on a given day at a certain time, and we schedule students and adults and staff to get tested. Now, after much conversation with our lead nurse, Donna Arzamowski, and also Katie Duncanson, Dr. Santa, and others have been a part of this conversation. We feel that the best option for Cumberland is option two, and that is the option where the Department of Health will come in and do the testing for us. And we actually have a tentative date selected for us. They actually assign a date. So, and I say tentative because there is, who knows, things can change between now and then. And the tentative date is February 24th. So that is another issue that will require more communication and more attention. And as that develops, we'll be sure to share it with everyone. So I think the important thing that I would want everyone to know is that a tremendous amount of thought and time and effort went into that decision. And we feel that that is the right thing for the Cumberland School Department. So the last thing that I wanted to share with all of you, and I don't know if anyone, has any questions for me about the things that I just discussed, but I just felt that I needed to say this on a personal note. I need to thank the school committee. I need to thank the Cumberland staff, and I need to thank the Cumberland community for the kindness and support that they have extended to my family and me over these last 3 weeks as a result of the unexpected and sudden death of my son, Joe's wife, Emily. They have 4 little kids. As you can imagine, we are committed to supporting my son and our grandchildren. And as you may have also heard, Emily was also 4 months pregnant, and we lost baby Joey as well. It has been difficult, but I must tell you that the kindness that you all have shown to us has really helped us get through a very difficult time. And I hope you understand that, I always, anyone who knows me, and certainly everyone who works with me knows that I always say family first. And I hope everyone understands that there are going to be times when I need to be there for my son and our grandchildren. And I can't say that I'm not a little distracted at times under the circumstances, but I want you all to know that I'm going to do the best that I can to fulfill all of my responsibilities between now and June, when, as you all know, I will be retiring. But my son wanted me to make sure that you all know how much he appreciates the support and the kindness that you have shown his family. And I just want you to know how grateful I am. So thanks. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mitchell. And you know you can continue to count on our support. Through this. Are there any questions, Mr. Fiorello?
Mr. Mitchell, first of all, I want to say that, you have definitely earned our support over the last several years. And you take the time that you need when you need it. I also want to just ask a question about the in-person learning. And I don't know if you can even answer it at this time, but do you have any gauge of how, if we're talking about moving, essentially, are we going to have, say, classrooms with 20 kids in them again? Or are we going to be taking away distance learning teachers and combine everything so we can still spread out in-person classes?
Well, as I mentioned, there are a number of challenges. So, for example, one is transportation, right? We know that that's going to be an issue. One of the things that we have discussed is, meeting the social distancing requirements. We know that we can't do 6 feet. We have to, and there are colleagues, my colleagues in other districts that have made the decision to get students in school to follow the American Academy of Pediatrics guideline of 3 feet. And when, and we have heard that when students are wearing masks, students and staff are wearing masks, 3 feet is acceptable. So even, that is something that we've already discussed in our initial meetings, that social distancing is something that we're going to have to get resolved. And there may, we may have to make some difficult decisions about, moving people around. And there is a possibility that we may have to move some students too. And that will always be, the last thing that we want to do. But if we want to get students back in school, we're going to have to figure a lot of these things out. But that's a great question. And that's one of the things that has come up. And we know we need to get it resolved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Collins?
I think, the news of potentially beginning school with more full in-person learning is exciting, but also kind of, I'm sure a lot of parents and teachers alike have a little bit of trepidation. Is there any plan to poll the parents? One of the concerns possibly is maybe parents like the hybrid model, they like the social distancing, and they may be a bit nervous about just going, not that they're just going to be throwing them in a classroom, but is there any plan to poll students or parents or even teachers? Perhaps teachers may even opt out. These are the kind of long-term things that just I jotted down as you were talking.
So that's another really important point, Mr. Collins. One of the things that we discussed is that the very issue, surveying parents to gather information as to where they are in this. My sense is that there are going to be parents who are understandably concerned, but I also think that there are. I think, and I don't know about all of you, in the emails that I'm getting from parents, I think they weigh more toward, their desire to get their children back in school on a more regular basis, other than just 2 days. But I think it's important that we use math, that we survey folks to get a sense of, what they're thinking and feeling and what they would like. And here's the thing. This is going to be a lot of work. And we understand that, but there are districts that are doing it. There are districts that students are back and they're doing okay. So I just, as a superintendent, I just feel that we have a responsibility to at least consider it. I want to say that we're absolutely positively going to do it if, there is science and, a significant number of folks that are concerned about it. But I think we have a responsibility to try.
do you think there might be any numbers issues? Like one of the things, I think a memo was sent out, or there was an email or something from one of the elementary schools that I saw about parents who want to opt into distance learning, because distance learning is closed. But will we have space if parents want to, because of this model? I mean, of course, and if it's too early to say, that's okay too.
Well, I think it is too early to say,
Okay.
but do I think that there are going to be issues where we may have more students interested in doing, it could be either way. It could be more students than we can accommodate in a classroom, in a school, in person, and the same could be true from a distance learning perspective. So these are all the things that we need to work out. It's going to take us some time to to hopefully get all that resolved.
Bob, I just wanted to say, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Carrie.
Thanks. It's tough on Zoom. Just to follow up on what you were saying and what Dennis mentioned, I know that it's too soon to tell about, parents who might want to move to distance learning if the hybrid option ends up going to full time. But I also just want to make sure that we're looking at the new variants of COVID-19 as well, that tend to spread more with children from what I'm reading. I don't know if that's in Rhode Island yet. I don't know if that's only California and Colorado, but it's definitely something we need to consider.
Thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Rogalski?
Thank you. Has there been any thought to whether the availability of vaccinations for teachers will influence that timeline? As such, depending on it already has been pushed back, if it's pushed back more, will that have any impact on your decision making?
I think I think that is definitely a consideration, and one of the things that has been a main topic of our discussion as superintendents in our weekly meetings is that very issue. And I think everyone knows that educators were expected to be vaccinated in the next the second tier, if you will. And initially the expectation was that it would be, the middle to the end of January, but because there is such an issue with the supply chain, there are people anxious and willing to get the vaccination. They're just on enough vaccinations in the states to actually give them. So it's going to be pushed back a little bit, but I know that there is an attempt to, for lack of a better term, put pressure on the state decision makers to get educators vaccinated sooner rather than later. So do I think that will play, into the decision? Possibly. And it's just so that, I hope you all know that, I'm the superintendent. I would imagine that my opinion would weigh fairly heavily, but we will make this decision collaboratively as a leadership team, as we always do. And certainly the school committee, is a part of that decision. So we want to do the right thing. And there are districts that are doing it and things are going okay. And I think, like I said, we have a responsibility to at least consider it at this point. It doesn't mean we're going to do it, but I think we need to consider it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. DeMonica?
Mr. Mitchell, is there any plan for the middle and high school to come back, or is it just for the elementary at this time?
I'm glad you asked that question, Mr. DeMonica, because that was a part of the conversation. So, I don't want to say exactly, what the plan is because we don't have it yet, but I think the initial thinking is, let's get these kindergartners, these first graders and second graders, let's get them in, transition them in first. And again, I don't want to be inaccurate, and I don't want anyone to think, oh, geez, that's what they're going to do, because hasn't been cut in stone yet. But so our thinking is going through this transition. But we also discussed, bringing in grade 6 and then perhaps bringing in grade 7 and 8. And we also talked about the same thing with grade 9, bringing in grade 9. And then as we get more acclimated to bringing students back, then we can develop some sort of a schedule where we can increase the number of students that we bring back. At least that is, and again, I'm a little reluctant to even share that because, we don't have anything, like I said, cut in stone at this point. So, but that is the thinking, and I think it makes the most sense. And we're not going to drag this out. I mean, if we can do it, we'll move it along at a reasonable pace.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is reports of standing committees. And the first item is payment of bills. Mr. DeMonica.
Mrs. Friedman, the Fiscal Subcommittee meeting did meet tonight. We had check registers in the amount of $2,461,777.75 that were presented to us. And on a 2-0 vote, it was approved for the full committee to approve the payment. So I would make a motion at this time to pay the payment of bills in the amount of $2,461,777.75.
Okay, Mr. DeMonica has made a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Collins. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it 7-0. Thank you. And the next item is the Fiscal Management Subcommittee update.
Mrs. Friedman, we did get a report tonight, a couple of items. First is that the business office monthly reports, Mr. Prignano, brought us up to date so far. We're looking right now at about $165,000 deficit. That should get better along the course of the rest of the year with some additional savings in our busing schedule. And so that's what we're looking at right now. Mr. Prignano and the superintendent has a meeting tomorrow with the mayor to discuss a couple of other items as well. Shauna Spillane from Sedesco Food Services gave us a report. This last month, we made $653.15. The school district is still running a deficit because of the COVID and the way the meals are being done. So we're keeping that going. We did ask her about the run-up if we started bringing children back to school. And she did state that we have a couple of issues, one with employees, which is Sedesco, that were laid off and have not come back, and so they're actively recruiting for the food service employees. And also we talked about, the 1 or 2 options that they have for meals right now. And so we got that report from Mrs. Spillane, and she will keep us up to date in regards to that. And finally, we have a payment for asbestos and work that was done, and for Torado Associates as well. As you recall, we had a special meeting in November just before Thanksgiving to have the asbestos removed from the transitional building as they get ready to do the work there with the replacing the unit ventilators. And so that payment is now here for approval. And I do know that the building committee, $83 million building committee, did discuss these items at their last meeting. And that's all we have for the Fiscal Finance Subcommittee update. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. DeMonica. Next item is the Policy and Procedures Subcommittee update. Mr. Fiorello.
Thank you, Mrs. Chair, Madam Chair, rather. We did meet for the first time with the new committee, Mrs. Feather and Ms. Smith. We discussed some of the basics about how school committee policy operates under the policy to create policies. We also discussed 3 policies where they are amended: J2 attendance, G4, and J11, which both are the bloodborne disease policy, which are all 3 are up for a vote later on the agenda. We also discussed the desire to delete policy J10, tuberculosis, which is no longer applicable to public schools, so there's no need to have that policy. And we also began the discussion on an immunization policy that Dr. Santa has put together using some state language and some directives from RIDE, which will appear on a future policy agenda for an actual vote to add it to the policy manual. We also discussed the need to discuss middle school grading because Mr. DeMona's team wants to make those changes that we've talked about since last year, actually. Those changes will be made for the fall of 2021. So we will have those started probably in the spring. We'll start having those discussions. And also we need to address the G6 policy, which is the policy which applies to all of our non-union personnel. That's all the administrators, the building secretaries, all the tech department. Hopefully I'm not missing anyone, but that is in a nutshell what we discussed the other night. It was a good meeting and I hope to have many more coming up.
Okay, thank you. The next item is the Achievement Communications Subcommittee update, and I will give that update. We did not meet, but we are planning to meet later this month and talk about achievement during hybrid learning. And we'll have other items on our agenda as well. And then the next item on the agenda is the District Health and Wellness Subcommittee update, of which at our last month's meeting, we appointed Amy Rogalski as the school committee chair of that subcommittee. And Amy, I'm not sure if there's an update yet or not.
No. I've just gotten in touch with everyone to set up a meeting. And so I'm going to be speaking with Mrs. Shabbat tomorrow and going over all the files and website and getting in touch with everyone.
Great, thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is public hearing, which is, I think, a matter of getting into the record, things that we actually will be voting on a little later, which is the item A, deletion of policy J10 tuberculosis. Mr. Fiorello mentioned the reading of the amended policies J2 attendance, G4 bloodborne disease, J11 bloodborne disease. Is there anything, Mr. Fiorello, to add to that?
Not, I would just ask that they be read into the record.
Okay. Thank you. And then there is an opportunity here for public comment related to those agenda items of the deletion of the policy and the reading of the amended policies. So this is an opportunity for public comment there. Mr. Chandler, see if anybody raises their hand related to those.
I don't see anybody with their hand up now, but if there's anybody on the phone, they can use *6 to unmute themselves and *9 to raise their hand. If they're on a computer, just raise your hand and I can unmute you. At this time, I don't see anybody.
Okay. All right, thank you. And so we are, we've read those amended policies into the record. The next item on the agenda is our general comments from the public. We have one now and we will have one again after new business. So the general comments from the public is an opportunity for anyone from the public to comment on anything they would like.
I do have somebody who raised their hand, Michael Hartley.
Okay, and so we ask you to state your name and your address, and just a reminder that we have a 3-minute limit and we're not able to respond to the comments. All right, Mr. Hartley?
That is fine. Hi, I just wanted to weigh in really quick on Mr. Collins, I believe, had asked if parents were leery of sending their kids to school more. And I do think that it is very important. that children get to school more. I have a kindergartner and a first grader. My kindergartner is doing great distance learning, but it's such a difference seeing my first grader. He's really struggling, and he really benefits from those in-person days. I do think the problem of social distancing is one that's a little overblown, considering that sports are starting back up, and you're going to have wrestling and hockey and basketball, and those are all very close contact. You're not going to get 6 feet. So I think to say you need 6 feet in the classroom when you can do sports is a little silly. And also, I just wanted to mention about the chart that the superintendent referenced. I did notice the biggest number on there, of course, was the people that were in quarantine. And I did just want to say, I know we personally quarantined in December. I know other families who have quarantined, but it's really some of those. I'm not saying that's the entire number, but some of that number is we didn't have COVID. We were just being safe because we had, the symptoms. So and I know other families have done that. So I think that may be inflating some of that chart. So I just like to keep that in mind when you do review numbers like that, that there are families who are just trying to, be safe for the school. And I think that would continue if it did move more in person. People would continue to play it safe so that they could benefit from in-person learning. That is all.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hartley. Is there anyone else, Mr. Chandler?
I do not see anybody else at this time.
Okay, thank you. We will have an opportunity a little bit later on. So the next item on the agenda is under new business. And the first item there is discussion and/or vote to approve amended policies, J2 attendance, G4 bloodborne disease, J11 bloodborne disease. And Mr. Fiorillo, I'll hand it over to you for any commentary.
Thank you. All we really did on this policy, unless I'm completely mistaken, we added some language because of COVID, which we had discussed many months ago, and then we never met again. We tabled it, never met again. What we've done essentially is stated, actually, you know what? I'm going to let Mrs. Duncanson, if she can, jump on here. She's the one that actually wrote the paragraph and has been leading much of this effort. If she can just give a brief synopsis.
Sure. So the policy changes were adopted in response to COVID, and there is specifically doctor's notes exceptions included in there, as well as a 1-year clause in it that indicates that when somebody is not present in person or not able to be present in person because of a documented quarantine or sickness, either themselves or in their family, because we all know that if somebody in our family is experiencing symptoms, a lot of times other members in that family are forced to stay home as well. That those students would not be marked absent if they participated in the distance learning of that classroom. And that is, there's a lot of words in it, but that's the gist of it. And I tend to complicate things with my legal jargon, but that is it.
That's why I figured I'd let you speak to it. Also, for some reason, my printer did not print anything with any color, so I can't read that section. So, Madam Chair, I would just make a motion to approve J2 attendance.
Okay, Mr. Fiorillo makes a motion to approve J2 attendance. Do we have a second?
A second.
Second by Mrs. Feather and Ms. Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it, 7-0.
Also, next up is the G4, and unless there's a problem with this, I'd like to just take G4 and J11 together. They are essentially one policy. Because the policy speaks to both employees and students in sections, we have two separate policies, but they are word for word the same. I have to say, I've had a lot of policy meetings. This was probably the most icky, to use a technical term, of all the policy meetings. And I'm going to ask Dr. Santa, because she is the one that made these changes based on what is currently happening in the world. The original policies from 2013 needed a good updating. So I'll ask Dr. Santa just to briefly explain the changes we made.
Yeah, I got to work on the icky policies. That's true. Essentially, the bloodborne pathogens is really based on a Rhode Island Department of Education and Rhode Island Department of Health policy that was written. In fact, it's not just based on; it's completely pulled from that existing policy. I updated, and I think the biggest change was adding a whole section on universal precautions, because that component was completely missing from our policy, but it is a big part of the policy that we follow stringently and actually do training every single year. So I thought it was important that we have that component in, and certainly with COVID, we're using universal precautions on top of that. So that's really the biggest change.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So unless if there's a problem, maybe Mr. Adams or Mrs. Duncan can explain it to us. I'd like to just vote on, can we do combine both and just have one vote? I'm going to assume that's a yes. So I will make a motion to approve both policies.
Okay, Mr. Fiorello makes a motion to approve G11 and J11. I need a second. Or is there a second? Second by Mrs. Rogalski. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it 7-0.
And lastly, we have J10 tuberculosis, which I don't know if Dr. Santa wants to weigh in on this. I don't know if it's necessary. It's just a policy that was created a long time ago. And my understanding is it no longer applies to public schools. It is really just applicable to health facilities.
Correct.
So correct. And I will make a motion to approve the deletion of J10 tuberculosis.
I will
Okay,
second
Mr.
the motion.
Fiorello makes a motion to approve the deletion of J10 tuberculosis, and Ms. Smith seconds it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it 7-0. Okay, thank you, Mr. Fiorello. The next item on the agenda is discussion and/or vote to approve resolution SCPR 01-2021-01, payment for asbestos abatement project to Torado Architects and Asbestos Abatement Company. Mr. DeMonica.
Madam Chair, this was in fiscal tonight. It's a resolution empowering the Cumberland School Committee to pay the Asbestos Abatement Company of Johnston, Rhode Island, $13,820 for removal and disposal of asbestos in the high school transitional building, and paying Torado Architects $1,650 for hiring the firm to inspect and develop an asbestos plan for the state approval. The total amount of the two comes out to $15,470. I do know that the building committee did look at these invoices. They both have been signed off by Holly Demers from Colliers International, which is the town's eyes and ears in regards to the $83 million project. And I would move passage. We've already approved the hiring of these people, and now the bill has just come due. So I would move passage.
Okay, Mr. DeMonica makes a motion to move passage for payment. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mrs. Rogalski, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it 7-0. Okay, the next item on the agenda is to review our options for entering a superintendent search to replace, to find the replacement for Mr. Mitchell. So Mrs. Duncanson will walk us through some options and for us to discuss and vote on our way forward.
Yes, thank you. So yes, sadly, for us, not for Mr. Mitchell, he is retiring. And so we do have to plan for someone to fill his big shoes. So really at this point, there are two options for the school committee in moving forward with that search. And I have a presentation and I'm going to go through it, but the two options are we can hire an outside search firm to do an external search, or we can do an internal, meaning my office would handle the posting and the search process for the superintendent. And so I'm going to go through, I'm going to present, try to share my screen, the options for you. So you can consider. All right.
And I think
Everybody.
Katie, just to clarify, when you say internal search, you don't mean.
Meaning that I would be the responsible for it. I don't mean just internally for Cumberland. Absolutely not. No. So it would be me leading the recruitment and the posting options as opposed to an outside vendor. So I just want to start off this conversation by saying this, given the Education Accountability Act, this is the one employee of the school district that you have the power to hire solely. And this is quite possibly one of the largest decisions that you make, in that it is, the direction of your district for the next, forever, how long they are. And it can really shift it one way or another. So it's an important decision, and I think that all options are on the table for the search. So the two options are using the outside search company. What that will do is they will submit a posting to a larger area. It'll really be a national search. They will do more of a push out recruitment option for the district. Obviously, we can tailor it however however you want, but the vendor would respond to you on that. But it is really the benefit of a larger candidate pool, if that's what you're looking for, is there. They do more of an active recruitment. They reach out, they touch local, individuals local or non-local individuals who they feel would be a good fit, and they try to get them to come in and be considered. This whole process would be managed and vetted by an outside company. It would require an investment of money by the district. In my research, in local searches, I have found similar searches range from anywhere from $10,000 to $18,000 for a search. And that is based on recent searches from local companies. There are a few companies that do these types of things. If I were to, or the HR department internally would handle it, it would focus more on local candidates. I discussed my plan, if this were option, with Mrs. Freeman about my plan on how I could reach candidates in Rhode Island and in Massachusetts and Connecticut. It would be managed and vetted locally through my office with the school committee. Little to no additional cost. Obviously, there would be advertising costs if we advertise in education magazines and things like that. You would have more control over the process, and it would be a slightly quicker timeline in that there would be no RFP process to approve and select a vendor. So the two is that you would get various stakeholder input that would be taken into account. School committee, administrative, really whatever the school committee would like to be considered in that stakeholder input would be taken into account no matter what option you choose. So you're not choosing to not take into account that if you choose one option over the other. Community, including students, parents, faculty, and staff. There would be in-depth vetting and reference checks in both options, and there would be an impartial review of the candidates in both options. I would be remiss if I did not tell you to keep in mind that there are a few things that should be considered. There are COVID logistics that we need to consider, but I think that we've done a good job of navigating as a country, the switch to a virtual recruitment and hiring. And then it might also make it easier for others to garner their input into the process as well by making it more accessible. We are running with a quick timer constraint in that Mr. Mitchell is scheduled to leave us on July 1st of 2021. We are always living in a world of budget constraints, and this year is no different. And so that does need to be kept in mind as we're going forward. So I put together a brief timeline, and I just want to put a huge caveat on this, and this is all dependent on a lot of things going right and not a lot of things going wrong. So an outside search firm timeline, again, dependent on the vendor agreeing to the timeline and being available for the timeline. It would take at least 4 weeks to go through the RFP process. There was at least one community that did not go through that process, and it made me a little uneasy, and I discussed it with our attorney, and I do not think that is the route. I think an RFP process, if you were to go that route, should be followed. And that would slow down it a bit in that you would put the RFP out, get proposals back, and then award a contract. So I would hope that could be accomplished by February 5th, if nothing happens bad. Then the vendor work begins. They don't know Cumberland, so they would be doing a lot of reaching out, gathering information from local communities, school, and administrative and staff input, and school committee. And then a posting would be drafted and put out there. A posting of this type should be out there for a minimum of 4 weeks. So I put a timeline of March 1st to March 31st out there, and then a vetting and the first interviews would be 4 to 5 weeks based on that. So that would put you to the end of April. Finalist selection and interviews beginning of May, and the superintendent would be hired June or July. Again, this is a very, very aggressive, and it assumes a lot of very smooth roads. So that should be taken into account. Let's see. Internal process. I could draft a posting and get it reviewed by the school committee and get things out in the next week or so, and simultaneously identifying the desires of the district through various stakeholders. Posting would be a minimum of 4 weeks. I could still continue the work of vetting the interests of the district. And then vetting, candidate review, first interviews would be March. Finalist selection, April, and superintendent hired in May. Again, very aggressive timeline. I believe that it's doable. I've built in a little bit of cushion in there for things to not go completely right, but it still could be delayed a bit based on availability, based on meeting schedules and things like that. But that is my estimated timeline of an internal. And that is really the two options. Do you want me to go back to any of the slides before I stop sharing my screen? Or are you good? Okay. Okay. So I have no preference for either. I think that this is truly a local decision that you all can make. I believe that Cumberland, and I've expressed this to Mrs. Friedman and Mr. Mitchell, Cumberland is in a unique spot, and I am a new addition to the Cumberland Administrative. I've been here for just about a year next month, and Cumberland has a fantastic reputation in local communities as to being pro-education, really supportive of schools. And, yes, you have budget problems, and yes, we have, things like that. That's not uncommon in districts. So I think that there are a lot of local candidates that would be highly interested in this position. Any questions?
Yes, Ms. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Duncanson, could you feasibly put this into your schedule? I don't mean that in any negative way, of course, but you have this role that you're in, and we have a lot going on this year between the bond and COVID and all the other things that are coming up. Would this be a burden, and would you prefer that we try to look outside? I just don't know if you have a preference, and I think that's really important to all of us.
I think that that's a valid concern. I would never want you to make a decision based on, if I didn't feel I could do it, I wouldn't give it to you as an option. I can do it. I can manage it. I have a very understanding husband and family who gets my job, and also this is very important for the district, and so I might shift a few things around. Some things might not make it to the done list in a certain week, but I would not have presented that it's an option if I wasn't feeling that I could do it.
Great, thank you.
Mrs. Rogalski?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Duncanson, is there a reason that you can't look outside of local if we keep it internal? I mean, I just feel like I would really want the best possible search to get the best possible candidates.
So I would advertise absolutely in national publications. What would not be done is that push out, because I don't have the contacts and I'm not a headhunter. I don't have that capability of pushing out into communities in Ohio and Texas and things like that other organizations would be doing. I have discussed my plan to I would post in the normal route of things. I would also be in communication with local organizations to get it out to their members, Superintendents, Principals Association, School Committees Association, to get them to send it out, and work with neighboring states, similar organizations, to get them to send it out as well. I think that if we work in, the Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut area, there will be a number of highly qualified candidates that will apply, as well as national publications that we might get a few that are actively looking in outside of those areas to come to Rhode Island. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Collins?
I think it's important we get the ball rolling as soon as possible. But I think one of the most important things was what you listed was including the stakeholders, parents, educators. And I think the sooner we can convene that, there's some of the things I don't know how we go about, like what we discuss, and maybe even that committee we convene with the stakeholders. What are we looking for? I think it's important that we have a diverse pool of candidates, not, from different backgrounds, but somebody who can continue to move Cumberland in the right direction, kind of navigate us, take the reins from Mr. Mitchell, navigate us out of this COVID, God willing, COVID to be over soon, get us out of this and start bringing us back to where the trajectory we were moving. But as for a nationwide search or whatever, I mean, to be honest, New England leads the nation in public education. I'm not besmirching other parts of the country, but if we're going to find candidates, we're going to find them here. And there are plenty of people out there. So I think, depending on how this meeting goes tonight, I'm fully comfortable finding somebody nearby. And when I say nearby, we don't have to find somebody within a 5-mile radius. I know Rhode Islanders don't want to drive more than 5 miles, but perhaps somebody from Connecticut, Massachusetts, or even within somewhere around here. So I think I think we have some options, but we need to get it going soon because we have so many issues coming in. Budget in July 1st is going to be here before we know it.
Yeah, and yeah, Mrs. Feather?
I just wanted to second that. I agree that we need to get it done soon. I think that my preference would be to do it internally because I have faith in you, and I have faith in all of us to, in all of Cumberland to really make this decision and try to get it done with that aggressive timeline. My one concern that not even concern, but just one thing that I just want to make sure that I bring up is Dennis mentioned diversity, and I just want to make sure that we do try to encourage diverse, candidates from all pools possible. I know that when I was in higher education myself, I remember when we were hiring for a department head position, and I was asked what publications we published our ad in. And it was a very good question because we had published things in just the places we always publish them. So I'd encourage us to look at diverse publications to also use.
Thank you. Any other comments, Mr. Fiorello?
Unless there's another comment, I'd like to make a motion to approve an internally led superintendent search led by Mrs. Duncanson, who I have complete faith in.
Mr. Collins?
I'm sorry, I did interject. One thing that crossed my mind too. I also want to, I don't think it's unfair to close the door to, as part of that regional search, if that's where we go, also open that up to any current Cumberland employees too. We don't know. I mean, there might be people who want to throw their hat in the ring, and I don't want to overlook them, especially people who've been in the district and have been faithful servants for a long time, and it may or may not be qualified. And I think that's something a committee can decide upon, but I would encourage internal candidates to apply as well. Internal meaning current administrators or people, former administrators.
Agree. Okay, so we have a motion on the table by Mr. Fiorello to move ahead with the internal search for the superintendent. Mr. DeMonica, did you have a comment or?
I did have a comment, and that was, previously to Superintendent Mitchell and Dr. Thornton, we did have a search for a superintendent, and I believe Mayor Mutter may have been in charge of the school committee at that time, and I would urge us to reach out to him and find out what process they may have used. And more important, I'd like to see the school committee, if it's all possible, have a special meeting to discuss the type of people we want on that search committee to conduct the interviews and so forth with Mrs. Duncanson's leadership. And, I'd like to see us, get a better handle of who'll be on that committee from the town, mayor's office, wherever it may be, former school committee people. So we have a good idea what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And just so you know, that last search was in 2011. I looked back in my archives because I had applied to be on the search committee, to be on the interview for that superintendent. I wasn't chosen. I'm going to say it's because my travel schedule was too crazy at the time. That's what I like to think. But I have reached out to Mayor Mutter and to Mrs. Bolio, and have spoken with them because they were the ones who were leading it at that time, to get some feedback from them in terms of kind of what worked well, what didn't work well, what should we consider. And I think we can continue having those discussions as well. But 2011 was the last time we went out for a search. After that, Bob was appointed superintendent when Mr. Thornton left. So, that was 10 years ago that we went through a search. And at that time, it was more of a turnaround situation, I'd say, for the district. Now we're in a situation where we're trying to maintain and improve. We're in a good place and we need to keep getting better. So thank you, Mr. DeMonica, for those comments. So we have a motion on the table. And if anyone wants to second that, Mrs. Feather seconds the motion to use our internal resources to conduct the superintendent search. So a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, aye, and the chair says yes. So the motion passes 7-0. Congratulations, Mrs. Duncanson.
Well, thank you for your faith.
Okay, excellent. And I'm sure we will get started tomorrow. The next item on the agenda is the second, comments from the public. So if anybody from the public would like to make any comments, you can raise your hand or *6, unmute yourself on the line.
We have a few people that would like to make a comment. I'm going to start with Mike Kinch.
Okay, Mr. Kinch, as usual, state your name and your address. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Michael Kinch, 25 Murphy Drive. Madam Chair, I just want to give the committee a heads up that we formalized the date of February 8th for the pre-budget consultation meeting. I'm sure Mr. Vanelli and Ms. Shabbat are organizing that now to get the logistics, and the agenda will follow. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
And we have Ellen Caruso. She should be coming in.
Okay, just state your name and your address.
Nothing yet. No, unfortunately, she's here, but it's not unmuting for her. Nope. Unfortunately, I can't, she's not unmuting.
Okay. Is there someone else that we could come back to?
No, but Ellen was the last person with their hand up. Let's change one other thing for us, see if we can get her to come back. No, unfortunately, I can't get her to get it to be unmuted.
Okay. We're sorry about that, Ellen. Okay, so we will move on, but if Ellen can get in, we can open it back up.
Okay.
The next item on the agenda is school committee comments. If anybody on the school committee has comments. Mr. Fiorello?
Yeah, I just wanted to give it to wish Tony, I can't think of his last name at the moment, who's retiring as the custodian from BF Norton. When the previous custodian had passed away suddenly, Mark was a great guy and everybody was concerned who would step into his role. Tony stepped in, and you know, it was a great transition for us at BF Norton. Tony's a great guy. He's gotten along with the kids. He's always there to help out in any way he can. And I'm sure many of the neighbors around the BF Norton area will see him on snowy days there long before anybody else, making sure that sidewalk is clear. So thank you, Tony, for your years of service.
Thank you. Any other comments? No. I just want to recognize our 3 new members who attended the Bryant University Hessenfeld Institute for Public Leadership. They attended the orientation for newly elected leaders, which was a 6-hour session on, covering our ethical and financial responsibilities, but also, understanding how to work together and collaborate across our community. So congratulations to Carrie, and Amy for partaking in that session. It's a nice offering that Bryant University makes available at no charge to town, municipal and school employees, members, elected members. So thank you for that. And if there are no other comments, the next, I see Ellen. Is Ellen still not available?
She is not.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is a vote to go into executive session. Mr. Mitchell, do we have executive session tonight?
No, we do not, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. And so the last item on
Motion
the,
to adjourn?
yes, thank you, Mr. Fiorello. Motion to
Second.
adjourn. Second by Mr. Collins. All in favor?
Aye.
All
Good night,
right.
everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Joined
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night,
Good
Ellen.
night.